So, hi Jeff, this is Martin. I'm from Germany. We've known each other for quite some time, and I'm very happy that we're going to be talking about some things that have impressed me about you and your lifestyle in the past and still does. So, why don't you just start out by outlining your ideas of how an adult American like you can or should live his life?
Well, not many live like I do. I'm more of the old school ways.
So, what are the old school ways?
Well,
What shaped you?
well, as I told you the story, what piqued your interest was my grandmother's family. My great grandpa Meyer,
Mhm.
Frederick Meyer, was a Protestant minister, Methodist minister in the East Coast. Helped open up the Applegate Trail, then went back and brought his family out west and spoke, I guess, probably native sign language. So he knew the Indians he had already encountered and came back and brought his family out west to settle and be a farmer up in Oregon, Central Oregon. And on en route, he had his daughter, my great grandmother, hid in a pickle barrel. Well, her sister was abducted by a bunch of Indians and Mormons mixed and held for hostage in Utah. And he had to give up his 4 Tennessee Walkers and his cows and his everything he owned to get his daughter back. So he came out west and settled in when the gold rush was going on. Was on the west side of the Sacramento River in Redding, California, up into Northern California in the Trinity County. And he settled on the east side because land was cheap and there's no gold, but it had salt, and he knew the Indians, and he ended up on their winter grounds. And he made wine, and the Indians loved that, kind of for his lease or whatever. And he sold turkeys to the Indians and farmed and was interacted with the miners. I mean, not the Indians, the miners. And then anyway, so my grandmother grew up on that ranch, and then my dad was born on that ranch, and that ranch went from basically so a huge section of land. And so the way she grew up and raised me is we would go every fall and go hunting and get deer, and you hang them and cut off, under the basement in the house, and you cut off chunks of meat, and it would get this black kind of leather casing on it. And you cut off chunks of meat and cut the rind off, and then eat your meat. And she'd make mincemeat pie and mincemeat and all those sorts of things. And so I learned that in the fall, gardening and canning and putting up. My youth was spent picking fruit, and we canned pears, apples, apricots, peaches, applesauce. I made all that stuff, and then we'd take it home and we'd have our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and eat her fruit from that we helped pick as kids. Most of our we were carrying tin cans around out in the helping her do stuff.
Well, now, how did that shape your life, not only as a
Well,
young person, but also as an adult? And how do you translate that into today's life?
well, I always wanted to have a ranch.
Okay.
So my goal is I've had ranchettes. Never
Mm-hmm.
could have a real ranch. It's a full-time job, and my uncles are all ranchers, and great uncles were ranchers, and they all ran cattle, through town like in the old days. So I grew up very much of the Western way of life. Even though
Mm-hmm.
it's California, it's Northern California, and it's more like Oregon, Washington, Idaho. It's very Western United States, living off the land as much as you can. And so I still have that way. And my children grew up that way. I was fortunate enough to get a ranchette and raise them on a ranch, riding horses, working on the cows, the chickens, and gardening, and, keeping your hands in the soil, so to speak. And that's much different. Now I moved to the Bay Area. I'm a contractor. There's no money in Northern California. There's no money in ranching. I came down to make money, and I came down and built people's homes and remodeled their homes. And the you got to go where the money is. You've got to make money.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And I ended up in the Bay Area, and I buy little old houses, fix them up, So my
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle's changed, but it's still what I gravitate to. I love to sit around a wood stove with a pot of beans on the wood stove. This is the way I was raised. I just like it simple. That's what I do.
Well, you told me that sometimes you just take off a couple days or sometimes even a week and go out in the wilderness. Just
Oh yeah.
like the pioneers, the self-reliant pioneers. No connection, no radio signal, no
Oh, I
internet.
loved it. Yeah, I'm still love to be off grid, and
Mm.
I archery hunt all my life. So And I know how to make traditional bows. I know how to make arrowheads and sinew bows and how to, black locusts or whatever woods around. I know how to do all that stuff, and I enjoy it. And I love to. I don't have any photos of me of that. I got one buck with a traditional bow, but most of them are like recurves or compound. But no, that's still to this day.
So what do you do when you hunt, when you get an animal?
Well, I'll tell you what happens first. To be a good bow hunter, to be a good archery hunter, you have to turn off society and slow time down. You get on a different clock. Your clock is sunrise to sunset. And you get on their clock. And the animal's clock is a very slow, patient clock. And you have to, it takes me almost a week to slow down and not pushing the animals to learn how to stop and sound like another deer. To sneak up on a nice big buck, you have to navigate through the smaller bucks. You have to navigate through the does. You have to keep the wind right. And they know you're there. They'll listen for you. But you can't be invisible. So you sound like another deer. You'll stop and pull on leaves like you're feeding, and they'll go, oh, okay, it's another deer. And you get in within range and get the shot. So that's the first thing, is learning how to navigate and be a hunter. And that takes, just like I said, shedding society and everything, the clocks and everything down. Slowing
How about
down.
smelling?
Oh no, you can't get any smell. I don't care what you do.
No
They'll smell you.
perfume, no nothing.
No, even if they put this scent stuff, it doesn't make sense. They smell you through whatever you have masked.
Okay.
You have to have the wind right.
Okay.
The wind is paramount. You cannot let any whiff of you happen. They snort and they all run off and the whole mountainside empties out. You have to figure out the winds, when the winds are right, when they're not. And that's another thing, slowing that clock down. You learn what's going on in those summer days. The winds coming off, off the desert in the morning, and then coming down the mountain in the evenings. All these things happen. You just learn the rhythm of life. You have to, and I know it, but I have to slow it down and remember it and get a part of it. And it's just part of the fitting in to be an effective hunter. It's being patient.
And then what happens when you got a deer or a buck? You
shoot a buck, and then it's like
you take it out, everything, or
you first thing you do, like if you're backcountry, like I do a lot of backcountry with just my backpack. I bring a knife and a little saw and a knife and a limb saw and some string and some matches. And I bring very minimal, because you have to carry a lot of meat out. 60 pounds of meat. So what I'll do is once I shoot them, I gut them and then skin them and quarter them and hang them up, the chunks of meat. Then I bone them, and I bone it out, and I'll put it in my backpack. And if it's in the summer and it's warm, you have to get them in a creek in the water to keep it cool until you can pack it out and get it in an ice chest, and then you take it home and butcher it. But I've been doing that forever. It's just a routine. In the winter, it's a lot easier. You hunt in the fall, like rifle season, and you get one down in the snow and everything. It's much easier to deal with them. They keep easier, and you just hang them and just keep the bears away. And the dogs do that when I'm rifle hunting. I have dogs around, I keep the bears away. The mountain lions, just keep the predators away, and coyotes.
And how do you sleep in a tent, or?
No, I call it a bear burrito. I just roll up in a tarp.
Okay.
If it's weather. If there's no weather, I don't worry about it. But if there's weather, I bring a little tarp, and I'll roll up in a tarp and let it snow on me. And, have a little hole, you breathe out of. Yeah.
Okay.
That way you're very nomadic. You can just wander around. You don't have to come back to camp. You find a spring here, then you go to another spring, and you go up on the mountain. You just kind of wander around.
So you enjoy that?
Oh, I love it. I find all kinds of arrowheads and antlers, shed antlers, and like I showed you my oxen hooves from when they brought the wagons across. I found those laying out in the desert. You just find stuff because you're going where no one's dumb enough to go, I say. That's where you find it.
Okay, so let's hope you can keep up that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And teach it to the young.
Yeah.
And now what are you doing now?
Oh, I'm just
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.